to mention when you mentioned Jodie Emery's name, that she also is so amazing in really illustrating and revealing the hypocrisy of now. Like, she was so prescient in showing Trudeau for the tyrant that he is and always was. In that, and if you're not aware, and it's something that you could play for your listeners or find, it's a very, very esoteric piece of radio.
Jodie joining us on News Talk. So, Jodie, what's your response to the Prime Minister and his urging police to enforce the law on marijuana?
I'm shocked and extremely disappointed. Trudeau used to say that we needed to decriminalize marijuana because people like his own late brother get arrested and charged, and it costs society and it harms a lot of people. He wasn't even in favor of legalization then. He voted for mandatory minimums. So then he came around to legalize, and we helped promote him. I ran with the Liberals to be a candidate. We got them a lot of votes, and Canadians said resoundingly, we want marijuana to be legal. They don't want it to be legal for stock market companies to make a huge profit. They want it to be legal because they're tired of being arrested and charged, of the tax dollars, the millions, hundreds of millions of tax dollars, persecuting innocent people. This law should be undone because it is unjust. So for Trudeau, who admits to smoking pot himself, to say that the police should enforce all of the laws that stand means that every Canadian is still at risk of being arrested for possession. They still get arrested every single day. They lose their jobs, their kids, their right to travel, their right to volunteer. They're treated like second-class citizens. So when Trudeau says he doesn't want to legalize to satisfy the consumers of cannabis, which make up about many millions of Canadians, who does he want to satisfy? Because right now their messaging is entirely directed towards promoting these licensed producers, in which many ex-police and ex-politicians and ex-prime ministers are investing in and operate. And meanwhile, they want to close the dispensaries, which are responsible for making marijuana laws change in this country through civil disobedience. The only reason laws have changed is because people broke the law, went to court, won, and had the laws changed. That's the only way we've made progress. And for my organization, for 20-plus years of our activism at the forefront of legalization, we will not stop demonstrating what legalization should look like, because this is what Canadians want. Trudeau is turning on everybody on this issue.
So you don't feel that what you're fighting for is upon you, is upon us, that this is something that is going to happen in 2017, that patience should be enforced here? Like, you feel that Trudeau is turning from what he had said prior or previously?
Absolutely. Trudeau said that they would move to decriminalize immediately, and he's reversed that stance. He said in Winnipeg just 2 years ago or 3 years ago that he supported dispensaries like the one that was operating there, and now he's turned against them. At first, a lot of the talk was about how young people get criminal records. They make up the majority of criminal arrests, by the way, which does far more harm than using marijuana. And these young people get arrested every day across Canada. And he used to say that was wrong and it cost us money and it hurt people. Now he's only talking about protecting the kids and stopping the gangs and restricting access. It's all very prohibitionist talk. In fact, it's fair to say that Prime Minister Trudeau is now being worse than Harper with respect to marijuana, because he's telling the police to enforce the law, even though the country has said they want that law to not be enforced. And he's also wasting tax dollars protecting the profits of these licensed producers who have lobbied to control the entire market. They're literally trying to freeze out the people who sacrificed and got arrested and went to jail and built this industry and marched in the streets. We fought for decades. And now they want to keep us criminal, keep the laws the same, enforce the mandatory minimums that Harper's government passed, and that is not the legalization Canadians thought we were going to get when we all supported Trudeau. He's a traitor to us.
Well, I mean, recently, as of Friday, and I mentioned the quote, he said we haven't legalized it yet. Yes, we got a clear mandate to do that. We've said we will. You don't believe him? Like, he's come out and said that just as of Friday. Like, you don't think he's actually going to do that?
I believe they are already sending messages through the task force report and all of these very strong messages that the recreational market will be restricted and limited to the licensed producers approved by Health Canada. And those licensed producers will send it through the mail. That's the least popular option. That very option has resulted in top courts ordering the government to allow people to grow their own marijuana because mail-order marijuana cannot meet the needs of this country. And the reason dispensaries are opening everywhere is because the public supports them and they do no harm. The marijuana laws that exist are actually manufacturing crime. And when Trudeau says we have to wait and be patient, the only people that are benefiting from that are the police, who get millions of dollars to go after people, and the gangsters who still run the market that have the small part that they do. But it also hurts the potential for all Canadians to benefit. When he says we won't legalize to create jobs or please the consumer, he's basically saying we'll say no to the model we've seen in Colorado, where hundreds of millions of dollars are being raised to build schools and fund really important projects. Jobs are being created, farms are growing, people are going into science and tourism and agriculture and architecture. There's so much potential. So this government, to deny all Canadians that multi-billion-dollar potential, to criminalize the people who built that industry, and to tell them that they're going to remain criminal in the future for years to come, it's just making everyone wait for, well, what sounds like another election, which will promise us another carrot on a stick of maybe one day we can live without being afraid of being arrested. But for now, every day I wake up afraid for everyone I care for who's peaceful, who is faced with the threat of arrest. Trudeau has declared war on millions of Canadians who use and consume cannabis for personal or health reasons.
She was instrumental in confronting Trudeau with saying, can you please stand down your goons? Right? Like, if this is all about reducing court pressure and backlogs in the court, and particularly what it was said to do from the first time that they even did studies on it, from like the early 70s, where it was known that it was disproportionately affecting, the prosecutions were disproportionately affecting people of color. So, you know, of all strata of color, you name it, whether it was a Native kid in Canada or a mulatto kid in Canada or an Indian kid in Canada, whatever you want to say about it, they had a much higher chance of being put in prison for having a dime bag on them than I ever would have, Simpa, ever in a million years. Like, literally, like, you know, middle class white guys, the chances of you going to like jail were off the charts. And what they did find, of course, when they did send somebody who was of a demographic that wasn't normally targeted by the police to jail for it, or prosecuted them for it, that created a criminal underclass, because it meant that they were extricated from all of the trajectory of potentials of what their friends were able to do, including going to post-secondary school and including traveling to places like heavily prohibitioned at the time states. You know, all of these factors were playing into it. But the main one being that at that time, Trudeau was just all about being inclusive and all about being diverse and all about being, you know, prescient and leading edge in being like this thought-provoking person. And the simple fact was, he was challenged to please stop putting disproportionately, particularly young people of color, into the court system at juvenile ages, and literally, in some ways, literally destroying lives. As you and I know, you said earlier, like murdering people, like literally putting people on a trajectory where within the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they're literally going to hang themselves because of the repercussions of being targeted. And again, it was made so disproportionate. Everybody knew that, like, if one person was being prosecuted, there were literally 200 that were going free, that were doing exactly the same thing. It was literally that random, and that, you know, sort of like losing the lottery rather than in any way being treated fairly by any system. And all the way through that period and up until the day of actual legalization, Trudeau kept the dogs barking all the way through that period. Kept doors were being kicked in, people being turned upside down, cops even almost having that like attitude of like, it's not legal yet, you know, you don't flaunt it in front of us, you know, that sort of behavior of like the bullying aspect of exactly why the vast majority of authoritarians and order following pedos in the main, and pedo protectors at least, shouldn't be anywhere near authority to begin with, let alone like in charge of particularly the future of youth. And that, I feel like that needs to be mentioned because it's such a tiny element of, it was a window in. If anybody knew about that, and again, like, I don't know how like slight the information circle would have been of that little snippet of Jodie Emery confronting that at the time prime minister, who was so high on his horse, and just saying, literally, like, being polite and pleading, just saying, please, just like, it's almost legal, just stop, just get the police to stop now. Why don't you just stop now? And he never ever did, and he had the authority to do so. And it was just like, so many people trusted him up until now. Well, there he is, he's taking away your bank accounts, he's running over elderly disabled women with horseback thugs. You didn't see it coming. Well, Jodie Emery did, and she saw it coming like 6 years ago.